Gonna dive a little bit deeper into last night's game, and I got a guest to help me with that. What is up, Finn fans? Yes, I got my guy Tyler DeSena. I think that's how he pronounces his name. He's helping me break down the last night's preseason game. Really insightful stuff from Tyler. If you haven't found him out, he'll let you know, but I'm also going to let you know. You can check him out on Twitter. He got some ringing endorsements from Omar Kelly, and he knows his stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get him on. He works hard. He breaks down film. He starts, he has his own YouTube channel, all that stuff. So I'm like, let me get him on, pick his brain. He was at the game. He could see things I couldn't see. So I had him on, and he's going to help me. But before we jump into that, I do have to give you guys some updates. Mike McDaniel did meet with the media yesterday after the game. When it came to Jalen Waddle, he said he's fine after misdirection injury in practice, a midsection injury in practice earlier this week. Nothing serious / long-term. And when he talks about Cam Smith, he said it's a left shoulder injury, and they'll know more today. And then on Robbie Chosen, he said he didn't play last night because he was dealing with a nagging injury. And that's the same that has to do with Dan Feeney. Dan Feeney was also dealing with a nagging injury. Same with some other guys that probably would have played if they weren't banged up. So just to give you guys an update on that. Jalen Waddle's fine. He's going to be fine, and he'll play week 1. Cam Smith, left shoulder injury. We'll know more today, and if there's any breaking news or anything, I will make a video about it. And then Chosen was just dealing with a nagging injury, and that's why he didn't play. So without further ado, after giving you those updates, me and Tyler are going to break down a little bit more what happened last night and go in more depth and hopefully make you feel better, but also bring some caution to the light. But other than that, I will see you guys. I'm going to give myself a break. I told you guys I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to give myself a break. The Dolphins aren't back at camp, I think, until the 16th when they're in Houston with a joint practice on the 16th and 17th. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's Monday when they're back at camp. So I think tomorrow I'm going to breathe and breathe. But I'll see you in the next video. Well, usual, stay classy. My fins up. Got my man Tyler here. What is up, bud? You were at the game.
Yes, I was. Quite the experience. Obviously, not the outcome we were all hoping for, but it is the preseason. We're, experimenting, trying different things. Pretty much none of the starters were playing. But how do you feel, man?
I'm all right, I guess. Like, I'm trying to take a step back and be like, it's just preseason week 1, but I'm not liking what I saw out of the backup quarterbacks. Like it, and a lot of people I've heard say, oh, they didn't have the starters out there and they'll do better with this and that. But the interception by Mike White was bad. He threw into coverage. He missed Braxton Berrios. He threw it behind him, which forced the incompletion. He also missed, I forgot who it was, but a tight end overthrew him, what could have been another touchdown. And then you had Skylar, who I hoped he would have been better being the second year in this offense, and he struggled. What did you see at the game? I heard some people saying there was guys open down the field and they kind of just were struggling getting the ball out. What did you see?
As for the quarterbacks, I mean, I feel like I wasn't, obviously being at the game, we don't the tape's not out yet. We don't have the full picture of what Miami was running, but
yeah,
I feel like there were definitely opportunities in front of them. Like you said, the Braxton Berrios play, which was right on the goal line. The pick, I mean, it didn't look like there was much there. I was sitting not far. I got a video and put it on Twitter of the pick.
Mm-hmm.
They say always don't be late over the middle. And obviously that was closer towards the sideline, but there's 3 guys in that area and 2 of them were Falcons. So it's I feel like a lot of it was just forcing things late. And, it looked like a team that had not played a game as far as the quarterbacks were concerned. In a while, it looked like guys trying to catch up to speed. I'm obviously, got to be somewhat objective. I didn't really, obviously the quarterback play wasn't something that I loved, but we'll see more as like tape comes out. But yeah, they were definitely some of the fallers if I were to, place it like that.
One of the surprising things I noticed is that Emmanuel Agba was out there with the running with the twos. I know he's kind of learning a new position. They have him kind of in that Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb position, but I thought they would at least sat him, especially for the amount of money he's getting paid too. Like, what were you a little shocked too to see Emmanuel Agba out there, or you more expected that?
I guess I didn't expect it, but I do understand the fact that he's a Mike McDaniel like holdover from the Brian Flores era. I mean, obviously we gave him the extension. I think Mike McDaniel was here. It was last year we gave him the extension. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with it though, because like you said, new position. This is somebody that I don't think is going to be getting, starting reps on this team. Those edges are definitely Phillips and Chubb. So I get him as a rotational guy, but I don't think I noticed him at first. Like, I think he's one of the guys that you look through the depth chart and you're like, oh, Emmanuel Agba is there. And then I saw the first 2 pass reps of the night and he's in the backfield on like both of them. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy who should be starting on like 25 or more NFL teams. And he's playing against the Falcons too. He was the star of the defensive line tonight. And man, I mean, it's clear that like there are definitely depth issues in certain spots, but man, Emmanuel Agba being back healthy, he looks great, and I'm super pumped for him.
Now, some people are saying, and I didn't really think about this because I was thinking more Cedric Wilson, but if they trade him, that's a $15.2 million cap savings. So all of a sudden they have like $26 million in cap space to potentially go out and get like a Dalton Reisner or something like that and Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about that, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but
go.
My thing with Agba is I feel like we just watched, I mean, obviously this isn't the same positions, but I feel like we just watched a game where Miami was getting gashed by, don't get me wrong, a good running team in Atlanta, but these are 2s on 2s. And it looked like you would guess that it's like their 2s versus our 3s. Miami's been very clear that they don't necessarily love the defensive tackle situation right now. Mm-hmm. They went out and they brought in Deshaun Hand. He played a bunch of reps tonight after getting signed last week. Pretty much. Like they're trying to like figure that whole thing out. Obviously Emmanuel Agba is not going to be playing much interior defensive line in this scheme, but I feel like getting rid of any depth on that defensive line is just probably something we can't afford to lose. And not a lot of guys are going to be cut because those are typically the positions where it's like, just stack as much depth as you can.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. It's funny because, like I said, when I saw it, I was like, and then I looked and I was like, like if they got a trade partner where they could get something substantial back, like a potential trade for an offensive lineman or something, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head because that was one of the things I noticed. What drive was that? I think it was their touchdown drive, the Falcons just running it down their throat. And I'm sitting there like, call Akeem Hicks, call Ndamukong Suh,
100%.
Call them all and see if they could come in because the depth behind Wilkins and Sealer and Raekwon Davis is just, it's not there. And like you said, Vic Fangio talked about it.
Yeah, and the thing is with like Sealer and Wilkins, and those are my guy. I love both of them. I've been on the Zach Sealer hype train for years now, but the thing with both of them is even they aren't the typical Fangio type defensive tackles.
Yeah.
So like there are a lot of guys who like get a lot of their looks like gambling and being more aggressive as defensive tackles, while Fangio kind of like wants that from his edge play, like those aggressive guys, and the these tackles he wants kind of clearing these lanes for linebackers and safeties and run support. And I just don't like those aren't necessarily his type. I think that's kind of the reason we haven't seen a Sealer extension or a Wilkins extension yet, because it's like he wants to see how these guys fit with a role change. Obviously, we've heard a lot of great things about Christian Wilkins in camp, but a lot of it's going to come down to games. I wouldn't be shocked if Miami, if there was a move to be made, I wouldn't be shocked if some of that money isn't being held over for a Dalton Reisner or Dalvin Cook, or if it's actually being held over for, like you said, Nakeem Hicks, because that's a guy who I believe played under Fangio with the Bears. So that might be more of their style, like gap eater defensive tackle, who's a lot bigger, making more of an impact, maybe less plays than some of the guys further down the depth chart.
Yeah, 100%. They need, because once they lost John Jenkins, all of a sudden that depth kind of fell apart, especially with Raekwon Davis, who kind of hasn't really shown up, and he's due for a new contract, and it's like, well, can we really depend on him to be that depth? But some bright spots on that game. Cam Smith, he got banged up. As of right now, we don't know much about it. It's a shoulder injury, but Mike McDaniel said he'll know more tomorrow or today, because we're recording this Friday night. But Cam Smith, like, we heard a lot in camp, him doing those diving pass breakups and making the tackles and stuff. Cam Smith makes me feel better, because again, in my eyes, the plan is you're rolling with X and Jalen, and then next year you cut X, you save a ton of cap. There's your rotation guy. Then all of a sudden Cam Smith and Jalen, and then you find your. What's your thoughts on the way Cam Smith played today?
I think Cam Smith is the perfect, like, I think genuinely of the rookie corners, because I did a lot of work on draft stuff for like podcasts and just trying to figure out what guys I liked in round one. I thought Cam Smith was probably going to be like a round one-ish guy, fringe, like late round one, early round two. And that's not a guy I expected to be available for Miami but he is a perfect fit for the stuff Vic Fangio likes to do.
Yeah.
And the reason that, like, I've hyped up Cam Smith and I've hyped up X a lot of the summer, like before Jalen Ramsey got hurt, just because those are two guys, like X early in his career, Xavier Howard was getting a lot of his production and interceptions off of gambling in zone coverage and, reading quarterbacks' eyes, jumping the ball. And everyone thinks about the defensive player of the year caliber season he had with Brian Flores, where he was playing a lot of man coverage. But before that, a lot of his production in the years where a lot of people thought that he was becoming a top 5, top 10 cornerback in the league were those years where he was playing a lot of zone and was able to sit back and be that amazing play reader that he is. He's one of the smartest corners in football. And there's just not a lot of opportunities to do that reading in man coverage because you're reacting to the guy in front of you. Cam Smith, in my opinion, is the same type of football player where a lot of his stuff comes off instincts and comes off making plays like at the right time based off of what he sees. The guy's got really good play recognition, a very smart corner, in my opinion. And you may not think that because you'll be like, oh, he's gambling. But when those gambles are like 80% of the time right, that's the kind of stuff that I really like to see from him. He keeps his eyes in the backfield a bunch. Obviously, it is just the first preseason game, but if he can just be the type of player across from X to just make a couple big plays, Miami has some of these like rocks on their defense that can just be solid guys. Like Xavier Howard can very much be a solid guy still in this league. You've got Javon Holland, who I'm expecting, honestly, could take a lot of the Jalen Ramsey role of being in, because I was expecting Jalen Ramsey to get a lot of work at like safety and nickel spots that, like, he was always talking this offseason about, I'm not a corner, I'm a DB. So I was expecting him to get a lot of like the star position, they call it, where he's in the slot, he's up at safety. Javon Holland in college did all of those things, and people forget that he's been a single high safety for the last 2 years under Brian Flores and Josh Boyer. So that's somebody I expect to take a lot of it. But Cam Smith is somebody that I just think when you have all these good players across from him, and he doesn't have to necessarily, get the best matchup or play these number one defensive roles, I think he's somebody who could be a huge beneficiary.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with Xavier Howard, because one of my biggest memories of him is when, I think it was 2018, or was it 2019? I think it was 2018.
19 was the year he was hurt, I think, for most of the year.
It was the Colts game, and he picked off Andrew Luck twice before the halftime.
Yes.
And both times he baited the crap out of Andrew Luck because he let T.Y. Hilton go 3 or 4 yards ahead of him. So Andrew Luck thought, I got him, and he threw it, and he caught up and intercepted it twice. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You play that zone style defense, and you're like, nah, you had to throw to him, and then you catch up to him.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
He had this. I remember I was actually at this game as well. It was the 2017 versus the Broncos, I think. Another game where he had 2 picks, and I think one of them was chasing a guy down, but there was another one where he was just sitting in the zone, kind of hovering over towards one receiver. I think it was Trevor Siemian playing quarterback at the time, threw it to the receiver behind him. He comes up, makes the play. May have been a pick 6. Like, that's the stuff that Xavier Howard was doing early on that a lot of people forget, because he switched his like playing style to be the Brian Flores man coverage corner, and then was like the best corner in the NFL for a year.
Which is good, because now he's got that dual threat to his game, even though last year, to me, it was the groin injury that kind of really inhibited him from playing to his top potential. Offensive line, we'll talk about that. I noticed that the big runs, like the Gaskin run and like those big chunk yardage, came when Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson were out of the lineup. Like, did you notice a big difference in the offensive line towards the end, like the middle of the second quarter?
Yeah, I kept watching because I was on the Dolphins sideline. So every time it was like in a commercial break, I kept watching to see who was coming out, like, and specifically looking at the line, because I was like, I want to see Isaiah Wynn tonight. I want to see Liam Eichenberg tonight. Where's Miami going to slot each of them? And obviously Liam Eichenberg got a lot of the first quarter reps. But that second quarter, I saw Wynn come in, and I saw Keon Smith on the left side. And I felt like that was kind of when a lot of those left side runs opened up. Was they kept there were those drives that, I mean, one of the drives in the second quarter where they were getting down the field, obviously they didn't score on these drives, but a lot of these drives where they were getting down the field, where they had like these 3, 4, 5 good chunk runs of 6, 7, 8 yards, were behind that left side of Wynn and Keon Smith. And I was honestly really impressed by both of them. Wynn obviously is going to be the bigger name, because that's somebody who's competing for the left guard spot. And after tonight, I think he's definitely in the lead for that job, because I really think he had some struggles in some pass reps, but man, those run reps looked good. And for somebody who's played his entire career to this point in a Bill Belichick power system, where like a lot of it is just block the guy in front of you, he's somebody who gets downhill pretty quickly. And that's the kind of stuff that Mike McDaniel's looking for when you're going to be doing a bunch of outside zone, a bunch of RPOs, and you're pretty much betting on guys to get to the second level, where you need that like one key block where you can get a guy like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane now free in the second level. I think that Wynn was the guy that I was super excited to see. He balled out, and then Smith would probably be one of my like down the line sleeper contributors, because I think he can really make this roster.
Yeah, and both of Eric Izukoma's end arounds worked at the left side, and the big one that broke off is when, like you said, Smith and Wynn were on that left side. So it's we'll see how that all pans out. But overall, looking at everything you saw in the preseason, give me a few of your highs and your lows.
All right, highs and lows. I think the highs would be, I like what I saw from the rookies tonight. That's definitely one of the highs. I think this is the first time in this rebuild where the rookies you drafted the year of are like, they must be contributors, because they all got drafted at spots where you don't have another guy. Cam Smith, now you don't have Jalen Ramsey. Cam Smith is likely going to have to play a lot of reps this year and be successful. Drafted Devon Achane. That's the kind of one where, you have some guys there, but you really don't have a dedicated pass catching back right now. Maybe it's Savon Ahmed, maybe it's Jeff Wilson, but you drafted Devon Achane to be that home run hitter and pass catcher. So he's going to have to do that a lot. And then you have Elijah Higgins, who in my opinion might have the most important role of the three, where Eric Ezukanma, like somebody has to be this big slot player, because everyone talks about Mike Gesicki didn't, he left and he wasn't super effective in this offense. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't what we all hoped he would be.
Yeah.
But when you combine him and the yards you got from Trent Sherfield, that creates one pretty good, Frankenstein tight end right there, big slot tight end type, where you have somebody who can block out like Trent Sherfield did on those slot like corners where he was bodying most of them throughout the year. And then you have a guy like Mike Gesicki who was making a bunch of red zone catches. If Erica Zukama and Elijah Higgins, who had a couple of good catches tonight, and obviously there's a lot of work to be done, if they can combine to create some sort of decent big slot, you throw Braxton Berrios in there, Robbie Chosen in there, if they can just kind of find some of those yards, that's a big thing. But like I said, the rookies were big. As I mentioned before, Wynn is winning the like left guard job right now. He's definitely up there. Keon Smith was a high. Emmanuel Agba should be a starter on most rosters. And I feel like those are my main ones.
What's your downs? Who you struggling with?
For lows, the quarterback play is the number one. It's going to be, I think obviously the biggest elephant in the room is Tua's health. We know whether you love Tua, you don't, or you're somewhere in between. You know that when he's healthy, the offense is going to put up numbers and they're going to be good enough to get you in the playoffs. And with this roster that you have top to bottom, you feel like you can compete against most teams. But if Tua isn't playing for a chunk of games like he wasn't last year, or he didn't the year before, or the year before that, there's been games that Tua's missed. You're going to need somebody who won't go like 0-5 in that stretch. And the quarterback play didn't prove anything to you that you don't feel better about it than last year. And last year was when you had some of those disaster games where you needed to win just one to make the playoffs, and it came down to a 9-6 victory against the Jets to sneak in. Like, those are the kind of things that I'm just not super excited about. And then, like I said before, the interior defensive line is probably my second big faller. This is going to be like Vic Fangio's system. I think the number one issue is it relies heavily on a certain type of interior defensive lineman. And that's the reason Fangio's been talking about it since he got hired, is the fact that they need guys who can eat space and guys who can allow those linebackers to come up. And that's why they got David Long, who, PFF grades however you feel about him. He was one of the best run stuffers in the NFL at linebacker. Jerome Baker is somebody who has been shaky at times, but when you have another linebacker across from him and David Long, that's not a bad core of guys who can get downhill. They got Aubrey Miller, was a primary undrafted free agent, and he didn't have a bad night tonight either. But that's somebody's they got a lot of guys who are specifically run stopping linebackers, and I don't know that they've dedicated enough resources to getting D linemen who can create those gaps. So the quarterback play, interior defensive line, those are my primary downs.
Well, Tyler, thanks for stopping by, helping me break down the preseason game a little bit more. Where can they find you? I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate 100%. It. This was a great time. And, obviously hope it happened on better circumstances when it comes to a win or a loss. But, hey, I really appreciate it. As for finding me, pretty much any platform at Desena Sports, Desena, how you see my last name, DESENA Sports on YouTube. I had some film breakdowns up last year. There will be more up this year as we get more into the season. Expect some of those. Twitter, that's primarily where I am, tweeting a lot about the Dolphins, NFL as a whole. I've been putting out some previews, some videos where I'm just talking about issues with the team, kind of like we did here. And then, I feel like those are the two primary spots. And then I also have a podcast, the Wee Ball podcast. So if you have any interest in that, primarily college football. But like I said, once again, really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, you got a ringing endorsement from Omar Kelly. So I was like, I gotta get Tyler on here, man. I gotta get him on sooner rather than later before he gets scooped up and become famous on me.
Man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you soon and we'll do this again.
Sounds great.